Good morning. We are in Hemshech Ayin Beis, reviewing its conclusion on page 1408. Actually, 1409, sorry. 1409. Top of the page. And we began understanding the idea of the eye that sees, eyesight, which referred to as the neshamas, as they are in their root. They're connected to the root of eyesight, and the way the neshamas come down below is how the eyesight manifests within the eye that needs a siyua of an outside light, namely Teira with the Eine Ha'eda, the eyes of the people, which is their leaders. So Hoven Zeba Aveda, we began to understand this in Aveda, the Posuk in Hazinu, after he says Chelik Havaya Amoy, that the Jews are Chelik of Havaya, he continues that Sevevenu, even though they were in a difficult place, in a desolate desert, Sevevenu, God embraced them, God encompassed them. Yitzonehu ki ishin enai. And how did we translate Yitzonehu from Rashi? We translated that as that he protected them, like the pupil of his eye. So we see here that word, because Neshamas Yisrael are called the pupil of the eye. Now we find also, Malachim are called Einayim, Einay Hashem. So Meshetetes or Meshetetim, Malachim that are either in the masculine world or the feminine world. How do we know it's the Neshamas, not humans? Because it's Shiva Einayim, it says 7. A human has 2 eyes, like we explained. So these are the Malachim. And why are they the eyes? Because they're like the supervisors. Marad Ayin, Marad Ashgachusa. So to understand that, after establishing that the neshamas are called Eshen Einai, the pupil of the eye, Malachim are called eyes, what does that mean? So to understand, he went back to the mashal, going back to the example of a physical eye, of Adam HaTachton. So he's basically saying like this, that the power of vision consists of 2 elements. One is the very power within the soul, and that's an ethereal force. The neshamas lamaila also have that. Mazlaya chazi. Neshamas see, but what they see is spiritual things. Then there's the second part where the power of vision manifests within the klei ha'ayin, what he calls chomer ha'ayin. The chomer ha'ayin shebachomer oiver u'mislabish kayach zeh haruchni. Now, it passes through, it manifests within, you can say it like channels through. Think of taking an oil and a keli. I gave the example, electricity is now channeling into an appliance, into a light bulb. And that allows it to be nitfas b'mehusriya gashmis, and we should actually see physical things. Because the power of vision, before it manifests in the very substance, a very physical eye, vessel, it's not be'erech, it's not commensurate, it doesn't relate to grasping something physical, because a nefesh in general is muvdal min hageshem. Like the soul outside of the body is not connected to a body. It's only so he calls that like a levush ba'alma. Think of it like a garment. Like the soul itself would be an energy, but then you dress it in a garment, and the garment gives it substance, gives it something tangible, something concrete. Keli levush, b'aksham was davar gashmi. And then he gave finally the example of eyeglasses, spectacles, glasses. It says, when a person looks through glasses that illuminate, that allow him to see better, he says, the glasses, it's not like the glasses add to your power of vision. What are glasses without vision? Nothing. It's like a garment. What's a garment without a body? What's a garment without something to dress up in that garment? So it doesn't add in the koyach hariyah in the soul. The power of vision is an ethereal power within your soul. So it doesn't mesif, rakshi mechase. What it does is it monitors and regulates the filtering to allow the eye to see well. We'll soon see how all this plays itself out in the nimshal, in the moral. She says, it will conceal, it will like limit. Like he says, Ayin has a number of membranes and filters. With time, when these filters, these klippas, these membranes, they can dull or they can fade, and that will cause too much light to enter the eye, like we spoke yesterday about the pupil regulating it. Because then the filter has been compromised, like someone who's looking at the sun and without sunglasses. So too much light, he won't be able to see properly. So it could be, I said yesterday, it could be a result of too much light or too little light. Here he's saying too much light. So the kleis chuchis mechase or master al eir. Al eir hariyah. The glasses will somewhat create a filter, an additional so-called additional filter is a good word, regulator. So be'erech tfisas adover gashmi. That's where we stopped. So we still have to understand why is he adding this? What's he coming to add with all of this? We'll get there. But he's going to discuss now, we can read further, the parentheses, umukol mokim. That's what I'm going to continue reading now. So we're on the line al eir. It's around third way down on page 1409. Pages can be found at ayinbeis.com, and let's continue reading. Umukol mokim, just for the record, the parentheses doesn't end. So they say the parentheses ends 6 lines later, after the word dover gashmi. So now in a parentheses, he's coming to qualify something here. And then he's going to continue what the nimshal is. What's the lesson? What do we learn from this example with the physical eye? It says, Mekol mokim, chaymer ha'ayin, and nevertheless, the chaymer ha'ayin, the very substance of the eye, ein rak kamei levush ha'mastir. So now he's coming to qualify his. We said earlier that it's not the physical eye that sees, it's the power of vision in the soul that sees. However, it cannot see a gashmistic thing until it goes into the eye. So he called the physical eye only like a levush ba'alma. It's only like a garment, or a levush v'keli, keli v'levush. In order to manifest, like just as like a light bulb will manifest electricity, the physical eye will manifest the power of vision in the soul. But then he brought eyeglasses. So the question is it also, are they both equal garments? Is the chaymer ha'ayin the physical eye, regardless whether you have 20/20 vision or not, or how good your vision is, but is the chaymer ha'ayin compared to the power of vision, koyach hariyah, like eyeglasses compared to the koyach hariyah? So he says no. It's not just like a garment that conceals, it basically channels the power of vision that you should be able to see a physical thing. Ki'im b'chins keli. And here's the key difference. Eyeglasses he's going to call a garment, which actually is relevant to Shabbos, for example. Some people don't need eyeglasses, like wearing a garment. It's not so, but a chemer ha'ayin is a keli. I'm sorry, she'isa akshama. I misread that. Sorry. So it's not just an outside keli that is incidental. It actually takes the oir hariyah, oir hamalubish ba'ayin, the oir that manifests within the eye. Just like an appliance that comes alive through electricity, it's not just an incidental thing. It actually takes the electricity and makes it come alive, let's say in a light bulb, that it gives off light. Liyaz be'erech hagashmi. So the keli is actually drawing down the oir that it should become something that can relate to physicality. Whereas the power of vision in the soul on its own would not see anything that's physical. That's the soul on its own. A soul comes in the body. Now the soul can relate to the power of the vision in the soul can see a physical thing. So it's actually the keli actually affects the oir in that way. Mashenken alavush eina isadover be'etzem ha'oir. Just a garment does not affect the etzem ha'ir. Rak shemastire. All it does is like being a filter, like say, sunglasses. Sunglasses doesn't affect your vision. It just affects the way you'll be able to see because it's filtering out more light, so you're able to see. So in other words, a keli is different than a lavush. Just to give an example. That's an example. We know a person wears clothing. So you'll see a king wears royal clothing. So if you see royal garments, you say, reflects a king. But a king can also put on garments of a pauper. And he can go anonymous and he can hide himself and camouflage himself because a garment is not necessarily reflective of who he is. Whereas, for example, the physical body of a person, the very body, your arms, your legs, as much as you say they're a keli to the soul, they're not your soul, but they're connected to it and they express it. So they're not just an outside garment. They are very much part of the process. So for example, if a person, let's say, has an injury, God forbid, or something affects their arm, the koyach to throw something or to write will be compromised. The garment they wear doesn't matter. If your garment gets dirty, it doesn't change the body and the soul at all. Obviously, a person needs to look respectable, but it's not like the garment has a direct effect, whereas the keli and the oir, a guf, has an effect on the neshama. We actually learned earlier that the neshama, the lower levels of the soul at least, are affected by the experiences of the body, mikre haguf. So the keli and oir have much more closer relationship than a lavush to the oir, which is the distinction between your physical eye and your eyeglasses. And it makes sense. For example, when a person gets older and they need, let's say, eyeglasses, so why? Because the eye itself has worn down. And whatever reason, farsighted, nearsighted, it's not allowing you to see properly. The eyeglasses don't change your power of seeing, but they create they counterbalance an outside force that shall allow you to see properly. Whereas the keli and the oir are much more connected. That's why when a person ages, the koyach, the oir haneshama, or the oir of the koyches, or the faculties, are affected. So it says, "V'zehu v'yesh ma'ile b'keli sha'ir nirgash ba mashenkin b'lebush." There's actually a quality, an advantage in a keli over a levush, that the oir is felt in the keli. Mashenkin b'levush. So to use this example here, your eyeglasses have no relationship. They don't feel the power of vision. They're an outside force that you're using to balance out your ability to see properly. Your eye, your keli actually feels. The fact is, I feel alive means I feel my neshama inside me. My garments don't feel it. The jacket I'm wearing right now, my shirt that I'm wearing, don't feel my chayas hanefesh. My body does. My body comes alive. The body and the soul become almost like one. So it's not just like a hand inside of a glove. It's like the physical hand compared to the power of the force that gives life to that physical hand. So this is the parenthesis, he's making this distinction. However, what is understood from the example, this is understood from the example. The kashem sha'kelis kleis chuchis enam isifa dover be'eraria. And here's now the common denominator. So why did he bring eyeglasses as an example? Because there is something in common. What's relevant here in the moshel, there's a distinction between a keli and a levush. But what is moving ma moshel? The kashem sha'kelis kleis chuchis, just like the eyeglasses. Enam isifa dover be'eraria does not add anything to the eraria. Same thing, the physical eye does not add anything. So when we say that the keli and the oir are what he said before, that they relate to each other, and the keli feels the oir, does not mean that the keli adds to the oir. And in that sense, there's a common denominator with eyeglasses. It's only through the physical eye, tefes erariya dover gashmi. The ethereal power of vision can grasp and see a physical item. So basically, in this parentheses, qualified, there's a difference between them, but there's something in common. Both do not add anything to the power of vision. Now, the fact that it adds that you can see a physical thing, yes, that's you can say is an addition, but it's not an addition to the power of vision. It means that the vision can now see a physical item. So in that sense, that's where the example of eyeglasses works, similar to the Chaymer. Where it doesn't, where they aren't similar, is like he just explained, 2 points. Number one, that one actually has an effect on the one that it has an effect because it brings it down into the geshem, and also the keli is margish the oir, whereas in the levush you don't have both those elements. The levush does not do anything to the oir at all, and does not feel it. So that's the qualification in the parentheses. I'm sure it's relevant to the bigger topic, but that we'll wait and see as he develops it. So the parentheses should end after Dover Gashmi Chulu. That's where the parentheses should end. And now he's ready to go back to the moral. But I'm happy to, if anybody has any questions.
I have a question. It's clear he's saying that the eye is Keli, but didn't he also say it's a lavush, and yet he's distinguishing the two? Am I misunderstanding what he's written here?
In general, he called it a keli and a lavush, but then in the parentheses, he breaks down the distinction that there's an aspect to it that it's similar to eyeglasses, but there's an aspect that it's not similar.
But it is both. I mean, doctrinally, the eye.
It's not a question of what it's called. It's a question of what it is.
Well, that's what I mean.
It has an element that's similar to eyeglasses in the sense it doesn't add anything to the power of vision. And then there's something that's not similar because the eyeglasses are an outside garment, whereas the keli is a keli to that oir and creates akshama in it and it feels the oir. That's what he said in the parentheses.
But in general, this is expanding the question beyond the eye, and just the Hasidic terminology or concepts generally. Is it the case that every keli is essentially a lavush for some manifestation of godliness?
When you say, look, it's all relative. The skeleton of the human body is relatively to the soul is like a keli and like a lavush, like a garment. But if you talk about your jacket or your pants or your shirt compared to your skeleton, that's even more lavush. So it's all relative. It depends what you're comparing it to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
But when we're talking about that which contains a manifest or divine godly energy, is it the case that a keli is also lavush, and a lavush is in some sense a keli?
Why not?
I didn't say it wasn't. I'm just clarifying with you.
Everything is relative. When you say chokhmah, is chokhmah a keli or lavush to Ein Sof? The answer is depends what you're talking about. There's a part of it that's like a keli. There's a part of it that's like a lavush. It depends. It's all relative.
Okay. In the context that you're trying to understand it. Thank you.
Well, we didn't yet get back to the nimshal, now he's going to go, the dugmil, now he's going to explain why he's bringing this example. Mm-hmm. Let's see how this applies now.
Thank you.
He's going to continue. We're going to continue now after the parentheses. He says, va'dugma mizeh. Are there any other questions before I continue?
A keli and a lavush are not the same level, right?
Keli in general, they can be similar. If you break it down, they can be different. That's what he said. That's what he's saying here. I remember many times I point out, Chassidus talks about ethereal entities that are not tangible, where you could say it's a table and a chair. A table is not a chair is not a table. That's it. It's pretty clear, the boundaries. In Ruchnius, you don't speak that way. In Ruchnius, everything is relative. So, Biyah, Atzilus could be a keli. Atzilus compared to higher than Atzilus could be a keli, but Atzilus compared to Biyah can be an oir, for example. And the same idea with keli and lavush. Like I mentioned, a skeleton, would you call that a garment, a levush, or a keli to the soul? So in general, you could call it a keli and a levush. That's why he said, if you look earlier, he used both words interchangeably. He called it keli v'levush. Then in the parentheses, he breaks it down. We break it down, really a garment, let's say a jacket, is far more levush than a skeleton compared to the soul. Okay. V'adugma mizeh, continuing, and the example from this, what is this helping us understand? What is this an example for? Why are we learning this? Yuval l'mayla. From this we'll understand how it is above. Because he's now going to explain what is Einayim, what is the eye, and the different aspects of it, and therefore what the role that Malachim and then the Shamas serve. Since we're there being called the eyes of God, so what role do they serve? So he says like this. Here's how it is Lamaila. B'chinas Einei Hashem, the Adam Elyon. So before he said we're going to begin with a mashal from the Einayim of the Adam HaTachten. If you look at the 2 lines from the bottom of the last page, Al Derech Mashal Klei Ayin Ba'Adam HaTachten. Now we're going to learn how is it Einei Hashem Ba'Adam Elyon. Because remember, the human being below was created in the divine image above. That's why we call Adam HaTachten the human below. Adam Elyon is the divine human, so to speak, meaning how the divine manifested in a tselem, in a image, in a likeness of human. That's why we call Atzilus Adam D'Atzilus or Adam Kadmon. Why is it Adam? We know it's not a human being, but it's the structure. Godliness is manifesting in the structure. So when you say 10 spheres, and from there evolve the 10 faculties, that would be said. The 10 faculties, the Adam HaTachten, in the human below is evolving the Shtalshlu Mehen from the 10 spheres in the Adam Elyon. So from Chesed of Atzilus, Adam Elyon, comes the Chesed within our faculty called Chesed within the Adam HaTachten. So the same thing with Einayim. The Einei HaAdam, Ayin Ba'Adam HaTachten that we just described, the example of how the eye works. The physical eye, the spiritual power of vision, the ethereal power of vision. He says, from this we'll understand how it is in Einei Hashem and the Adam Elyon. What means Einei Hashem? Chesed Hashem means God bestowing kindness, love and kindness. What means Einei Hashem? When we say that God has eyes, what do we mean by that? He says, is the Klei Hashgacha Shemashgiach Hashem b'chol ha'elamis. When you refer to God's vision, God's eyes, these are the containers, these are the instruments of Hashgacha. That God, obviously God doesn't need anything, but he wants, again, it should be manifest in a way that we can relate to. So just like our eyes can observe and watch and guide us and supervise, so too the Einei Hashem is the Klei Koyach. He says here they are the Klei Hashgacha, the instruments of supervision, if you wish, or of providence. Shemashgiach Hashem, that God watches over, and carefully over b'chol ha'elamis, over all the world. That's what's called Einei Hashem. God is watching. He watches, and more than that, we know Hashgacha. He guides. So every detail of life is guided by these eyes of God. So if you talk higher than the level of eyes, they're talking about God Himself. But God wanted it to come down, just like we have a Chesed of Hashem and Gvura of Hashem. We have Einei Hashem. And what are they in the spheres? In Atzilus, Heim b'chinas hakelim d'zod Atzilus. These are the kelim of the midas of Zoh, Zohar Ampin, of Atzilus. The Shehein Magbilim Ha'er, what do? They limit and confine and define the divine energy, like they channel it. That they should be commensurate and relate to the lower worlds, to watch over them, to supervise over them, and to transmit to them life and vitality, or energy and vitality, uleda, and to know, because Hashgacha is also knowing, as kol ma'aser tachtenim, b'chol habruyim befrat, to know all the actions, all the activities, all the ongoings, ma'aser tachtenim, b'chol habruyim, and all the creatures, befrat, Hashgacha protis, in detail. Im muchsharim maseyem, if their actions and if their activities and their affairs are muchsharim, are appropriate. That's what the Hashgacha does. So think of it like a mashgiach. What's a mashgiach? A mashgiach in a kitchen, in a restaurant, or any mashgiach. A mashgiach is a supervisor. He comes to check out, to observe, to make sure everything's done properly. So he needs to look closely at everything and relate to it. He can't just look with a bird's eye view. He has to be specific. So obviously the Eibush is called Yochel. He can do anything he wants. He could be all the way up in the highest levels and see everything, but he wants it to be in a way that he relates to it, and we relate to him. And that's where, if you recall, we discussed a number of times what the Esser spheres do. Why does Hashem need spheres? Because he wants a relationship with us. He wants us to understand how he works, and he wants us to be able to reconnect with him. If he just said there's a God in heaven, or a God within all of existence, and there's us, we'd say, okay, what are the handles? How do I, a mortal, finite human being, relate to God? So it says, ma rachum Hashem, afata rachum. Just as God is compassionate, you should be compassionate. Ma chanun Hashem, afata chan. In other words, we have what we call the interface. The story of Ayin Beis, the story of Chassidus in general. The interface, like a translator between a structured human being and a completely undefined God. So God created a platform, what we call Atzilus, or in general Seder Shtalshlus, where there's a meeting place, where God says, here are my divine attributes that I manifested. And here's how, and that relates to your particular faculty. So here, what do the Einei Hashem do? They channel the Oir Ein Sof, which was beyond structure, to identify with and relate to and supervise over Hashgacha Pratis, all aspects of existence. That's the Kelim of Zohar Atzilus, the Einei Hashem. Lashgiach, Lashpia, and to see, to know all the Maisa, all the affairs of this world in detail, to see whether they are being done properly and appropriate. Mukhsharim Maisayim. So that's what Einei Hashem serve.
Can you take a quick question, really quick?
Yeah.
Is Adam HaElyon, is that Ak?
Not necessarily. It's Atzilus mostly, but usually.
Mm-hmm.
V'hashgacha v'hayidiyah. And this hashgacha, this supervision, and yidiyah, and awareness, or perception, or knowledge. V'hashpos achayis. So he says three things: hashgacha, yidiyah, and hashpos achayis, the transmission of vitality or energy. Me'es Hashem, that's coming from Hashem. Who? V'hashgacha v'yidiyah v'hashpos achayis me'es Hashem. Who? I didn't rewrite. It means it's all coming from Hashem. He has not yet mentioned angels or other entities. All this is rooted in Hashem. Hashem is the mashgiach of over everything. Einei Hashem, we're calling it. Hainu, so though the kelim are the instruments through which God looks at existence, but it's all rooted in Hashem himself, which is Ein Sof, which manifests in the kelim of Zohar of Atzilus. So then why does he need the kelim? Because the kelim are like the channels that confine, that define, that establish the structure of the Oir. Like we spoke earlier about vision. There's the Oir Hariyah, that's an ethereal state, but you want it to relate to physicality, it has to go into a physical eye, a keli. As he'll soon explain more probably. Because if you only had the Oir on its own, the way it is, shaloi bislapshus, without manifesting, without enclothing itself in some structural form, it then they're not commensurate. They don't relate to the Elam Tachteim. That would be God, like I said, the bird's eye view. Of course he knows everything. But that's completely on his terms. It's not him relating to us. That would be like the king in his palace, some miraculous way, he knows everything that's going on in his empire. No, he wants supervisors to actually, or he wants to travel and be able to relate and say to the people, here I am with you, and I'm watching over you. So in other words, for it to relate to us, that's where the Kalim come into play. The containers, being that they are confined, they are defined, and they are structured, gvul, and they have parameters. Hakam she'heina lakus, even though these are divine kalim, because the kalim are not man-made, they are divine kalim. The Eibishter himself created these kalim. Hariheim akaponim be'erech ha'elamis. So they are akaponim that are at least commensurate and relating to the worlds. So it'd be like this. A teacher, an example. A teacher has some brilliant ideas to share with his students. If he didn't put it into words and into letters and expressions, it would remain within him, and he could smile and he could laugh and he could say unbelievable ideas I like to share. He needs to create kalim. So the ideas are coming from the teacher. They're not coming from the kalim, but the kalim are giving it substance. They're giving it a structure that he can now convey it to and relate to someone else, these ideas. So the ideas are like the oir. The kalim are the words or the letters that he's using to express it. So the kalim are also created by him. It's his kalim, it's his words. But they're words, they're not just a flow of consciousness within him. There's a bridge going on. The kalim serve as the place that channels the oir into some structured form. Be'erech ha'elamis. Umagbilim es ha'er, and they limit and regulate the oir, the light, the energy. Liyes be'erech hariyah v'ashgacha b'tachtenim. To be commensurate to the riyah, now he's using riyah, which is, as we said, that's a supervision. B'tachtenim in the lower entities. Ulashpia lehem chayis, and to mashpia chayis. The same idea. You have a big barrel of wine, and you want to pour everybody a little wine, a little keshel bracha. You need kalim. You can't just pour the wine into the barrel. The barrel has to go, let's say, into pitchers, and the pitchers into little cups. So the kalim are magbilim and mashpia the chayis to the lower levels. Going back again, every aspect of the moshel he's coming here. The kalim fundamentally are just a levush. They're only like a garment. The b'chinas koyach hariyah lekis atzma. When you compare it to the divine power, the divine vision itself. Now again, he's not distinguishing here between the levush of eyeglasses or levush of the chomer ayin, the physical eye, that he explained in the parentheses. We'll soon see how that plays itself out, if it does. But overall, it's only a levush compared to the koyach hariyah itself, relatively speaking. And now he's going to explain why the Einei Hashem are referring to Malachim. But let me stop a moment if anybody wants to ask anything about what we just learned. This is a beautiful piece explaining what Hashgacha is, Hashgacha Pratis, how the Eibishter manifests in so-called Kalim. The Eirens is manifests in Kalim in order to relate to us, to watch us, but in a detailed way, not just a distant, removed bird's eye view. You may recall we learned the difference between Yodua and Yodeya, that things are known to God or God knows. So Yodua was more passive, means he's in his place, he's completely removed, but everything is known to him. That's like a bird's eye view, that's beyond. Yodeya is when you say, Erdana, let us descend, the Era, and let us look. When he says, let's go down to Zdoim and see. So God, so to speak, the divine energy is manifesting and relating to existence. So when you say, I want a bracha from Hashem, you can get a bracha from Hashem from that so-called removed place. Or you can say, no, I want to know that God is with me in my details, in the specifics of my life. and he cares not just from like a bird's eye view over everything in one big picture, but there's a detailed relationship, a specific relationship. Okay.
I have a question. He talked a little earlier, like yesterday, the page above this, about briefly though, Malachim. So we talked then, and we talked in other places, and Ayin Beis, about Malachim and how they are essentially his agents, and they have a certain perceptibility, if you will. They have the ability to understand what's happening. Beyond the channeling of Elokus in the way that's just been described right here, are Malachim just breaking that down into more detail, or are they a different mechanism?
We're going to learn it. We're going to learn about it now.
Oh, okay. Maybe this is what I'm remembering. Anyway, okay. I'll stand back.
So now he continues. V'zeu gamkein inyan ene Hashem shehein malachim keneda.
There you go. How about that?
I mean,
I'm blind.
It's not a miracle, because the Rebbe Rashab did begin talking about neshamas and malachim, so it's obvious he's going to get back to it. Then he's going to talk about it at length, actually.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, but I guess at least my flow of thought is in the right place.
Yeah. Listen, the more you're in absorb mode, the more you'll be able to take at, Yeah. Okay. So if you recall, he said in the previous page, Malachim are called Einei Hashem, the eyes of God. So 1 second here, are they the eyes of God, or are they the eyes of the angels? So he says like this. Zegam ki Einei Hashem shem Malachim, Keneda. Shemalachim, I think Keneda goes on the next line, not the, or maybe it can go either way. Shemalachim, Keneda, as it's known, Shemalachim shorsha mebchinas chitzenius hakelim da'atzilis. So we called Einei Hashem kelim of Zav Atzilis. So it's known that Malachim are from the chitzenius hakelim, the outer dimension of the containers of Atzilis. Vehein shluchei hashefa. And they are called Shluchei HaShefa, the messengers of the flow, literally. But basically, the carriers of the divine energy, of Shefa, of the flow. Like we learned that Malach is like from the word Shliach. Lies, and how does that work? Being that the Chetzenis HaKelim, these outer dimension of the containers, Hu Inyan HaShpo Chutzlat Smuse Kenoida. That's the transmission outside of the core, as it's known. So let me give a few lines about, a few words of explanation about what means Chitzenius HaKelim. She may have recalled this, that there's Chitzenius HaKelim, there's Pnimius HaKelim. Actually, there's 3 levels. There's Chitzenius and Pnimius and Emtsois HaKelim. Kelim Emtsoim. But let's just talk about outer and inner. Physical example. When you take a kos, a goblet, a becher, let's say you make kiddush on. So one side of the kos is a keli to contain. It has to be appropriately fitting, the right materials and the right structure to be able to hold wine in it, or whatever the liquid is. That's pnimis hakeli, the inner part of the keli. If the inner part of the keli, for example, was made of substance that is either, God forbid, rotten, or not the right material, it wouldn't hold the wine properly, or spoil it. The outer part of the keli is the lip of the container that you take to drink or to pour to others. So in the keli itself, you have 2 aspects. One is the keli to receive it, and the other is to be mashpiyat to whatever the keli has to be mashpiyat to. So that's really, when a teacher is teaching, like I mentioned the example before, the kelim, the words that he's using, one of them are containers to the idea that he wants to convey. They have to be appropriate containers, the right words. But they also have to be words that the student and the listener can understand and relate to. In fact, let's say in electronic engineering, or for that matter, all technology, you need both things. You need to make sure that the that whether it's chips or resistors or whatever it may be, transistors rather, they are, number one, they're able to contain and carry the energy that flows through them, but they also have to be able to pass that on to the next stage of the interface of this assembly line to be able for us to receive from it and then ultimately benefit from it. So the Chitzenis HaKelim serve more, like he says, Shluchei HaShefa, that's the Malachim, the Mashpia, Chutz La'atzmusei. Whereas the Primis HaKeli is more to receive the Ur and then to pass it on. So bottom line is, what we spoke before about Einei Hashem being the Kelim of Zav Atzilus, Malachim are the Chitzenius of those Kelim, and they're the Shluchei HaShefa to Mashpia Chutz La'atzmusei, that this Hashgacha and this idea and this Riyah of the divine vision should relate to us, so the Malachim are serving as God's agents or God's supervisors, as we shall explain. Al Kain, HaMalachim Em Shluchei HaShefa, because they're these Chitzenis HaKelim, that's why they are the messengers or the ambassadors or the carriers of this flow. Like it says elsewhere. U'kamoi Kain, Al Yodam, that's Hashpah. So the Malachim are the carriers of the flow. So when Hashem, let's say, wants to bless us with Bona Chaim Ezeinu Revicha, the blessings will the Malachim will be the carriers of it to make sure that it's integrated properly and that we can contain it. We'll learn more about that. But there's also not just Hashpah, there's also Hashgacha. So here the Malachim also serve as Mashgichim. Kamoi Kain al Yodam. So too, through them, through these Malachim, who Hashgacha is also the supervision, Lashgiach, B'chol Maisa Tachtenim, to supervise in all the affairs of what's going on in the lower worlds. Now he's going to continue to explain that we should realize this is not, God forbid, replacing or instead of God's supervision, it's serving as a channel of that. The kol zeh b'chinas hamtzoy levad, he adds. All this is just an interface, just an intermediary. Doesn't have any power of its own, the malachim. Shehem umutzoyim, they are interfaces, shal yodam tiyeh hashgacha elokis, that through them should be this divine supervision. V'hainu shal yodam ba'aretz elokus yeser b'chinas hagbola v'akshoma, that through them, the divine reflection should become more defined, v'akshama, and more substantized, more concrete. Lashgiach gam be'ilulim satachtenim, be'ilulius hatachtenim. Interesting word. To supervise over the alulis, which means all the affairs, it could be conspiracies.
Ba'alulim hatachtenim. It is ilo ve'olo.
Why is there a yud after the ayin? And why is there a apostrophe? Not sure. It could be like from Alila, like conspiracies of Tachtein, meaning all their affairs. Maybe that's what he means. I don't know if he means it could be all of the effects of Tachteinim. Not sure. I don't remember how I explained it the first time. Huh?
Probably. It's a combination from Olul
and Alila. I think it definitely referring to the activities, the affairs. That's for sure. Because that's what he's talking about here. The Gavoya Mal Gavoya Shemer. Like we say about the angels, Gavoya Mal Gavoya Shemer, that they higher and higher. They protect Shal Yodam, Ha'oris Alakus, because through them come the divine oil, the light and reflection, Shebehem Oilim Kol Advorim L'mayla. So in addition to there being Mashpia and Mashgiach, they're also the forces that elevate everything. Everything elevates, but madrege yeser, they carry whatever is done, you give them and they carry it. They're like carriers, like mailmen. Like it is with kalim and the air that mislabish. So the kalim transmit, but the kalim also draw back. And the third thing, he spoke about ashgacha. He spoke about he spoke about shluchei shefa, ashgacha, yediyah. And I say, the transmission of energy, vitality. The containers draw down level by level. They essentially channel it properly. So is the kalim, and the kalim, which is the root of the malachim, is the chetzenis kalim. So through the malachim, this shefa, this divine flow, transmits to all the creatures and all the creations in each world, lefi erkei umuhuse. So they basically measure it and apply it to each one according to their particular needs. So Hashem is the one that everything is coming from. But they essentially are allocating it, or they're like they're distributing. I think I call them divine distributors. They're like distributing, and we're going to learn more about it as we continue learning further this idea. So that's why they're called Einei Hashem, because they serve like the instruments, like the kalim, like the klei Ayin, which is the way that brings the power of vision in the soul, is carried through the container of the eye, and furthermore through eyeglasses, in order for us to be able to see physical things. So that's what the malachim do relative to the Einei Hashem and the Adam Elyon, that they carry that vision and the Ashgacha and the Ashpa into specifically relating to each specific creature and creation. And with that, he concludes this paragraph, page 1409. Any questions?
I just had a linkage in my brain about etymologically the derivation of the word malach. You see in there melech as in malchus, as in providence. As in other words, is that a fair connection, or I'm saying something?
I've never heard it before. I don't know if it is. No comment. I don't know. If it may say something, maybe if there's a source, maybe, but I don't necessarily think it has to be.
But you can think about it. I mean, Malchus of Atzilus is the...
Yeah, but when there's no source, we don't have to force it. I mean, you could try to explain it that way. I don't see, as I said, I have no comment.
But you understand why I asked the question. Malchus of Atzilus is considered the aperture of Hashgacha from Atzilus into Abiyah, into Biyah.
What does it have to do with Melech?
Well, Melech is the sort of, I don't know, the master manifestation of Malchus. The Melech is the sovereign.
Okay, so firstly, you have to establish that Malachim are connected to Malchus, which may or may not be. Secondly, that is connected to their name. I have no comment. The only thing I can tell you is if you really are interested, you should research it. Look around. If the word Malach is ever connected to the word Melech.
Yeah.
He still didn't explain why is it Shiva.
No. I mean, even though you could say Zah is the Shiva Midas, is talking about that maybe the 7 is because it's Zah. But
Zah is Shisha. Zah Malchus.
No, but but it could be he's referring Zah sometimes in broad terms can be all 7. Zah is generally, you're right, 6, but it could be that's what he's talking about, from Chesed to Malch, the Midas of Atzilus. But he may say it, I don't remember. I think, if I recall, I think there is something that said, I don't remember right now. But he hasn't spelled it out, for sure not.
I mean, which, by the way, since we did talk about Zah of Atzilus, and if you do consider Malchus one of the Midos, which I think generally we do, then it's the lowest rung of Zah. So it fits my question about Melech and Malchus and Malachim.
As I said, it's called Mehech. If you find something great, let us know.
Okay, that's just a sense.
as I could understand, in the physical world, in Gashmiak, we call them neurons that connect all the body to the eye and even higher to the brain, and has division, censoring, and moving, something that give us the perception, and another part giving us the koach, the power to move, for example. In the Ruchnias world, we can call them Malachi, and they have the same division as we have it in Gashmiak, some more higher than the others. Some comes to the last, so to say, location. Some are transmit farther. It's very interesting what you just said. It has to be investigated together between science and rabbis.
Okay.
And one thing more, all these neurons transmit to the eye and give the signal from the eye back to the location. And some of them, and this is the last discovery, that some of these neurons pass not through the eye, but straight to the brain. And that's how the brain can react subconsciously to whatever transmission was. So what you said, everything matched Hashacha on the highest level on the Ruchnias, but in Gashmias we have this system vividly, absolutely can observe it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments, questions? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here. End of the paragraph on page 1409. Stop the recording. YouTube.
Did you stop the recording?